Hello again, and welcome back to the Flask Man Attic. I am, of course, the Flask Man, and today we'll be discussing the Erlenmeyer Flask. Now, the Erlenmeyer Flask generally has these sloping sides, giving it a cone-shaped effect. It has a flat bottom. This is a glass one, although they are available in other materials, different types of plastic. The Erlenmeyer Flask was, of course, named after its inventor in 1860, the noted German chemist, Dr. Erlenmeyer Flask. Now you can get, what? I'm sorry, what? Oh, it's mask fan. It's not flask. I thought you said Flask Man. Okay, it's all right. We can go that way too. Hang on. Hello and welcome once again to the Mask Fan Attic. Okay, now tonight's mask in the Mask Fan Attic is It, the Terror from Beyond Space. That's right, It, the Terror from Beyond Space. Now our old buddy It here is based on a great old low-budget drive-in movie from way back in 1958 called It, the Terror from Beyond Space. Where is beyond space anyway? I mean, I know approximately where space is, but I've never understood how one goes beyond space. But that's where he came from, beyond space. Oddly enough, in the film, he's hanging out on Mars. So how he got there from beyond space was never really revealed. But anyway, when you hear people say that Ridley Scott's Alien from 1979 was kind of a remake of an old low-budget 50s movie, this is the movie those people are talking about. It was called It, the Terror from Beyond Space, 1958, and it was very similar. It didn't have the chest-bursting thing, but it was similar in overall plot. And It, the Terror, designed by the late great monster maker Paul Blaisdell. And this version of It, the Terror that you see before you here, not actually from an original movie mold, this version sculpted by none other than Laura Lady, my wife. You guys know Laura. Yeah, you know Laura. Laura sculpted this one back in 1993 just because nobody had done one, and it was a cool monster. It was one of those movies that used to be on television a lot late at night if you stayed up late and you could watch old monster movies and old horror movies on late night TV. Back in the days when your chances of finding something cool to watch on television were much greater than they are now. It, the Terror, would occasionally be on, and it was a scary one. He was a very scary monster, always, you know, running around, thrashing around with these big claws and attacking people, and mean and ornery and hateful devil he was, too. Now, It, the Terror in the movie looked like this, but the original mask looked somewhat different. As designed by Paul Blaisdell, the mouth wasn't nearly so stretched open and stretched out here. The overall shape of the head was smaller and thinner. The neck was skinnier. So if you see a picture of one of the original masks made by Paul Blaisdell for the movie, it'll look different, and you'll think, is that really It, the Terror? Because in the movie, it looks like this. Why? Well, the story goes that Paul Blaisdell made the mask for himself to wear, and he thought he was going to play the monster. And he had kind of a small, thin head, but they got a guy named Ray Crash Corrigan to play It, the Terror instead, because he was a bigger and more threatening and imposing looking fellow. So they got him to play It, the Terror. And well, he had a big head and a big chin, and the mask didn't fit him, and he couldn't get it on. And when he finally did get it on, he couldn't see out of it unless his chin was sticking out of the mouth. Now, the mouth wasn't supposed to be hardly open at all. It was just supposed to show a little bit of teeth. But that was the only way Mr. Corrigan could wear the mask, and they didn't know what to do, so they just painted his tongue, or his chin rather, red and said, there, it's the monster's tongue. So if you look at him in the movie, the monster in the film looks like he's so angry he's biting his own tongue. He looks like his tongue is sort of protruding through his teeth, but that's actually Ray Corrigan's chin with red makeup on it. True story. Now, no less a sci-fi luminary than Bob Burns said he thought Laura's version of It, the Terror was one of the best reproduction masks he had ever seen. So she was happy about that. That was a nice compliment. Thank you again, Bob Burns. But the It, the Terror you see here was obviously based on what Laura saw in the movie, not the original mask, because the original mask, nobody saw it. You know, what you see in the film is what you come away with, which is this guy with this fat, lumpy face and the thick neck and the big, huge, thick, slobbery tongue that actually holds his mouth open. So that's the way she did this. Now, this was made entirely by Laura, entirely from looking at still photographs and freeze framing an old VHS tape of the movie It the Terror, and she went to great lengths to make sure all these scales and dots and wads and things looked very much as possible like Paul Blaisdell did them, and I think she really nailed it. The overall texture and the style of the sculpting and the way those scales and bumps and things look is really very, very close to the original, as are the teeth. Now this one was painted by me. Most of the ones that were made were painted by me. We molded this here, and we had the mold around for quite a while, and we made them for friends from time to time. And most of them were painted by me, but not always. I tended to like painting this guy kind of a drab olive green, or kind of a sea green maybe, with a little bit of brown shading, although a few other people painted them other ways. So there are some out there that are more brown than this one and less green, and there are some that are greener than this one, rather than this kind of dull brownish grayish green that I used. There are a few that are more of a bright green, which is legitimate, you know, and a few that are sort of a reddish brown. Now the reddish brown is based on the paint scheme given to the original, made by Paul Blaisdell. But since it was a black and white movie, nobody knew what color the monster was supposed to be in the context of the story, so whatever color you think he is basically legit. And the bright green looks like a good color for science fiction monsters of the 50s. The monsters were green in the 50s, so that works. And this paint scheme that I devised for him is a little subtler, and I think looks more realistic. And then the reddish brown is, as I had previously divulged, based on the way the original mask was painted, but not the way anybody saw anything in the movie, because the movie was black and white. You hear me? Yeah. You hear me talking? Do you? Yeah. Now, I don't offer these anymore. I mean, we don't have the mold on it anymore and don't offer these anymore, but you do still see them turn up from time to time, because I did trade some copies unpainted. By the way, if you make masks and if you have unpainted masks, that's one thing Dr. Lady loves to do, is trade unpainted castings, because it's always fun to paint and hair other people's masks, I think. So I traded. This was something that a lot of these got traded off for other masks, and then we would each, me and the other fellow on the other end of the trade, would paint our each other's masks just for fun and no profit. But it was fun. It's fun painting masks sometimes. So It the Terror by Laura Lady. You may still find one somewhere out there on Feebay or some such place, but a nice alien, I think, a nice tribute to the drive-in movies of the 50s and the American International low-budget forgotten monster classics. And I'm not sure how many of these actually exist, but well, I'm sure I still have one. That's pretty cool, right?